TV.square.
Content, information, and opinions expressed during the related show are those of the show personalities and guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes, to renting versus selling, and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live. 888-994-4995. Studio A.
Hi, and welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I'm your host, Laura Sanders. Today, we're going to start to get a little more specific on topics. And why do I say a little more specific? Because we've been very generalized on a lot of things. So I thought today would be good to talk about why we should get title insurance when buying a home. So I brought in our expert, Joshua Wiseman. I think he's a Wiseman. Anyway, brought Joshua Wiseman in, and we're going to talk to him today about why we should get title insurance. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
Happy to be back. Good.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Josh is one of our sponsors, and he is trying to show us what we should be doing when buying a home.
Right.
So different counties have different requirements. So in Broward County, and this is standard, not law.
Right.
But customary that the buyer would pay for their title policy and pick for the title agency, correct?
Right.
And then in Palm Beach, it's customary that the seller picks the title company and pays for the buyer's title policy.
Right.
And in Miami, I don't know whatever goes on in Miami. No, just kidding. And in Miami, it's customary that the buyer, again, picks and pays.
Yeah.
And then if you get to like, I think Vero would be that the seller picks and pays. And
yeah, weirdly enough, and definitely changes by county, but the majority of the state is seller picks and pays the title company or the closing agent, however you're referring to, with exception to, like Laura mentioned, Miami-Dade County and Broward County and Collier County. The seller always picks, and people get very confused because why wouldn't the buyer be picking and paying for the title policy of their future home?
Correct.
So it creates a lot of confusion, especially when people are coming from the Northeast, where each side has their own attorney and they're very confused. Like, who's doing the closing? Like, I don't know who they are.
Right. So what made you pick to do your practice in Broward then? Because wouldn't it make more sense if you went somewhere else?
Well, our headquarters are in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County, but we service the whole state. And we're also going to be launching in New York soon, since I'm a New York barred attorney. But yeah, we primarily do the Tri-County area, Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade, but just where the office is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, back in 2002, I purchased a property. And when I went to sell it in 2008, there was a title issue from somebody from, I kid you not, 20 years before, and the property had been sold several times. Several times.
Right.
How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, a lot of oversight by the title companies that were doing the closings. But, that's why people get title insurance. I mean, it's not...
But it says it's optional.
Right. It is optional, but two things. A, when people ask me why should they get it, I mean, it's your biggest investment in your life. It's going to protect your rights and your, ownership in the home. And if a buyer goes to get a mortgage, a lender will never lend you money without making you get a lender's title insurance policy to protect their investment.
But that's not optional in a mortgage.
That's not optional, right. So, but I always give that as an example, because if a lender doesn't feel comfortable to lend their money, and they're in the business of lending money, without protecting their ownership rights in the home with a lender's title insurance policy. Of course, and I don't say this just because we're in the business, but it's if you're buying a $500,000 home and your title insurance policy is a couple $1,000s one time forever, as long as you own the home, the reason why it's such a small amount is because, yes, like you said, it should be when you do title searches and lien searches, everything should come up, but you never know. There could be that issue that came up 20
Right, and they
years
had to
ago.
find a person that was dead.
Right.
So then they had to find those people's heirs.
Yeah.
That whoever would have inherited the property. I mean, this is like substantial research that
And
needs
legwork
to happen.
yeah.
Right, and who's going to pay for that?
Right. So if you have your title insurance policy, look, nothing is perfect, so it makes sense for a one-time cost to protect every person's biggest investment. So,
Okay. But I just had another
yeah.
deal, right, where the land, there was like a small piece of the land that wasn't written, the legal wasn't written correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the title insurance policy, they said, oh, it's minuscule, it's not important, so we're not going to cover it. So how do you determine what they are and aren't going to cover? Like, it was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, so in every deal, in every title commitment, there's requirements, there's exceptions, but, there's some, nuanced details, but that's why it's important to hire a title company, and we believe that's run and operated by attorneys. We have Adam and I, who are the founders of Title Brothers, but we also have 3 other attorneys within our title company and law firm. We run multiple businesses, but on that side of it, we have 5 attorneys on staff, so we always have attorneys with really good experience making sure that the right exceptions or requirements are included in the title policy.
Not to mention you can all collaborate.
Exactly. So everyone, it's good to bounce stuff off of each other.
Right.
But yes, it's amazing how many things can slip through the cracks, and you're happy that you paid a couple $1,000s 10 years ago to cover
Something that happens.
something so substantial.
But why wouldn't,
Yeah.
and again, I'm asking questions that I think that buyers and agents would ask, right? So this is not just to the buyers, but agents. We have a lot of questions. There's the lender policy, which you said is minuscule in cost to the lender, right? It's so much cheaper than what it is for us to buy our title policy. If a buyer is getting a mortgage and they say, okay, well, I don't want to get my title policy, let the lender get theirs. When there is an issue down the line, when they go to sell, they still have that mortgage, right? Because once they don't have that mortgage, that goes away, right?
Yeah.
But let's say they still have the mortgage. Will that title policy cover those issues like what I had?
They'll only cover like the amount of the loan, like the lender's policy. So if the loan was $400,000, it'll cover that piece of it. So if there's a $1 million home and the mortgage is $400,000, the lender's policy will cover that, and then the owner's policy would cover the $600,000 remaining. So you do have an option to cover the rest of the remaining ownership in the home. So it would only cover to the extent.
But could it cover fixing whatever it is? Because normally you have to fix the title problem.
Right. It just depends on what it is, and depends on if it's the full value of the home, or if it's legal fees, or if it's most of the time it is legal fees, like you said, having an attorney go back in time and fix stuff. But it depends. If it was a huge thing, it wouldn't cover what was excluded if the homeowner decided not to get an owner's policy. So
specifically, the reasons to get
Yeah.
a title policy, number one is because you're protecting your investment.
Right.
Especially a home that was built in 1950.
Right.
It's passed over so many times and things get missed.
And there wasn't technology back then, which,
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
And sometimes people ask me today.
It's all hand done.
Right. With technology, you can do title searches online. You could do lien searches online. And back in the day, people would have to go to the county and go through the records and the books and all the files. But, it doesn't mean that technology is perfect. And if something's not recorded properly, then something could also not be found properly with technology. So it's not.
Yeah, like I go back, I graduated college
Yeah.
in 1997 and graduated grad school in 2000, right? In 1997, I'm so thankful that we didn't have email, so that my teachers couldn't email me to do extra work. So I'm really happy we didn't have email. But, we have email now, so like technology has come and advanced so much. In 2005, before you were doing this business, there was a big frenzy.
Right.
And a lot of those title companies from 2000, you're probably going back and fixing stuff from those title companies from 2005 to 10.
Yeah.
When everything was like crazy, the short sales, everything.
Right.
And so now we're going back and seeing that those people during that 5-year span missed so much.
Yeah.
So, that's something that's really important, as well to to look at that. So I do have other things that we should really need to be getting on top of the topic, but I know that we need to go to commercial break.
Okay.
We're going to check out our sponsors, and we'll go from there, and we'll come back and talk some more.
Sounds good.
At Title Brothers LLC, our mission is to give you the best closing experience anywhere in the country. Founded in 2020 by Adam Lohman and Josh Wiseman, here at Title Brothers, we're your one-stop shop for residential real estate, title insurance, title and escrow services, real estate closing, and due diligence services. While primarily located in South Florida, we also host dozens of closings throughout the state and even electronically as requested. To contact the Title Brothers, call us at 954-995-4988 or visit our website and get a quick quote today.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fish, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fish is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fish today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at thelaurazell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi, and welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Today we're talking about title insurance and why you should get title insurance. Most people don't realize that when you're buying the biggest investment in your life, title insurance is something that protects you. It is an optional purchase on your loan, and some people say, well, I don't want to spend, it could be $2,000, $3,000, $1,400. The price is dependent upon the loan amount. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to spend that money, so let me save some money. So let's talk to Josh over here, who is our expert in title policies. What would you tell somebody, other than it's your biggest investment, why they really should?
Because nothing is stopping people from being unreasonable. I feel like there's a lot of wacky behavior out there these days. I don't know why, but anybody can come and say, oh, like I owned this home. This is my home.
Right.
And if you own, just like little things that can come up.
If people go, you know how like now Broward County Property Appraiser is letting you go on to register your home so that if somebody tries to get your property over to them, right, then would that protect you with your title policy if somebody went ahead and wrote their home over to you?
Well, yeah, you could just like protect yourself and you get, legal fees, because just because someone's wrong doesn't mean it doesn't cost money to defend someone from trying to pretend like it's their home. So anything is possible.
So let's talk about what isn't covered by title insurance. So some of the things are, give you an example, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Sure.
I think I'm learning something in the last 22 years, but we'll say, actually like 27, but that's besides the point. So if I was to buy a home and somebody put up a fence and it was encroaching on to my neighbor's property and I was to close and the title company never put it on the, they didn't redline it in the survey.
Yeah.
Would my title insurance cover me moving that fence?
Yeah, I don't think so from how you're explaining it. So.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's why
I didn't think so either, but I was like, let's ask, because a lot of times, remember I was telling you about that time span, 2005 to 2010, a lot of people came back with open fence permits, open permits. They're like, well, who's responsible for this? Now, we had one attorney who I used for many years, and he said, well, it's not my responsibility. Like, I'm not going to take care of it, but you missed it.
Right.
What's your responsibility as an attorney when you miss something like that?
Right.
None?
I mean,
listen, I'm sure you would do the right thing and try to help to rectify it if there was a cost involved. Like,
of course.
You want to stay in business and be in business, you would do the right thing.
Yeah, of course.
But he missed it on a purchase. This is recently, like in three years ago. He missed an open permit and said, but you didn't have the client sign an affidavit.
Yeah, there's.
So tell me, what do you think about that?
I mean, everyone makes mistakes.
Right.
We try to, like you mentioned before, we have 5 attorneys in our office. So there's always multiple sets of eyes and ears looking at every closing. But if you do something, there's always a way, like you said, to resolve it and post-closing.
But how do you miss open permits? Like, how does that happen?
You don't. You don't.
Okay.
Especially today with...
Like water bills, right?
Right.
I see sometimes title companies are not collecting. So if
Yeah.
it's my buyer, I'm like, hey, there's no holdback for water, which is
Right.
typically what, 2 or 3 times the normal bill.
Yeah, and to that point, which is I think a good way to like bring this all together, open permits and expired permits, those are not title issues. You can still close. It's not like you have bad title to the home. You still have good title,
Right.
but there's like a money consequence after. So like if we were to just, mistakes happen, not collect for the
But
utilities.
that's what a lot of agents think is for title insurance, and that's
No.
a huge misconception. So
Right.
that's why I feel like we're kind of trying to help the agents
Yes.
and the buyers, sellers, to understand better about title
For
policies.
sure. And that would be on us though. If we didn't collect for that,
Right.
you know what? Everyone makes mistakes. It costs money. You could give some sort of credit post closing to the
Right.
to the client. But yes, that's
and
not.
water
yeah.
bills attached to the property as a
Right,
lien.
exactly.
Where FP&L, which is weird that does, like one
Yeah.
does, one, why, what do you think is the reason? Do you have any reasoning behind that, or? Like, and like AT&T, like cable,
Right.
it's like, they haven't shut it off yet. So since they haven't shut it off yet, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's some things that I just have decided that make sense, and some things that just don't. It's just like custom for kind of what happened, and
yeah, but they're like, oh, I got a call the other day from
I guess the way I would say
AT&T called me the other day. My client had them call me to say, hey, they didn't turn off the cable.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get that turned off? And I'm like, okay.
Right.
I was like, that was weird. And it's not a lien to the property. It's a
No.
lien to the person.
I guess
But
'cause
water is a lien to the property and not the person.
I guess the best answer I could give for that is that, like for that address, when the seller sells and there's a new owner in the home, like the water and utilities are still for that designated address. Versus if I move, I could stay with AT&T and just transfer my account to a new home, right? So technically, you could still be involved with that company, but the water is going to attach to the home because that's not going anywhere. I guess just trying to make some sort of sense out of
I
it,
mean,
why that would
I mean, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Like FP&L is the same thing as water.
right.
I mean, well, I guess if you're going to a different city, right. I get what you're
so
saying.
that's
FP&L
kind of-
goes all around
Exactly.
if you
versus-
stay in Broward or
Local.
Palm, because there's certain areas in Palm Beach even that have their own water department. In fact, this is how, I think this is asinine, but if I buy a house in Boca, do you know where I have to go to turn on the water?
Where?
Boynton Beach.
There, you have to go to Boynton?
It's Boynton, and you have to go. Some cities like Coral Springs, like they just tell you to go ahead and send it. Well, we don't fax anymore. Like faxing's old school. Scan in the HUD and
Right.
which is the settlement statement, and they'll go ahead and turn it on, and you can they'll send you a bill with the deposit on it. So
That's also that's crazy. You have to go to Boynton. But that's another thing, just talking about all these things that are kind of misinterpreted in the business. Some people say settlement statement, some people say HUD, some people say the Alta, and it's always like
Right.
it's the same thing. It's just new versions.
yeah, I think the Alta came when we came into, which for people that haven't bought homes in 30 years, let's talk about what protection for buyers are today versus not that long ago. You know, in the last, I want to say 4 years, we've changed, 5 years maybe, where buyers are protected. If people that have bought homes 30 years ago, you would come back and get an interest rate, they would tell you it's going to be 6. You get to the closing table and it's 12, and you're like, how did it go from 6 to 12? And oh, by the way, by law, you know this, right? You get a mortgage, you better close. The attorney on the seller's side doesn't care what your interest rate is. You got a mortgage, you're closing.
Yeah.
If not, they're going to take your deposit. So with
You're
everything
talking
that
about
happened
with
with
the loan
TRID.
approval period and all that?
Well, no. See, originally back in the day, we didn't have all that stuff.
Right.
So back in the day, if you were getting a mortgage and they said it was going to be 6%, and the day of closing came and it was 12, you didn't have TRID.
Right, to protect you from that.
So
yeah.
everybody was freaked out about TRID, and they said, oh my God, it's going to take forever to close. So there is something that can be called into place for sellers. And a lot of sellers are like, What do you mean they get an extra 3 days? Maybe you want to explain that.
Yeah, because, it's just the mortgage, all these businesses, but the mortgage business, it's about transparency and the, if the mortgage company doesn't disclose the disclosure 3 days, it's supposed to be 3 days prior to closing, that's...
The contract protects you for that.
The contract protects you for that. So, it's supposed to be, there's the contract, but there's real life. So people are buying the biggest purchase of their life, and they can't be faked into a 12% when they were told 6%.
So let's, real quick on that, right? So let's say, for instance, a buyer goes to TRID, and I know certain things can't be within 10%, like the insurance,
Right.
what have you. And if that's the case, right, tell me, if they get to that 3 days before and it doesn't match, then you have to go back to the drawing table, and the seller has to wait 3 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you, for some reason, say, well, you really don't qualify for this interest rate, and you don't qualify, but now you're out of the mortgage loan commitment time? Did you lose their money? Not you, but did the mortgage company lose their money?
It can happen, yeah. So it's very important to work with a mortgage company, loan officer, loan originator, mortgage broker, however you refer to it, that does their diligence up front. It's not respectful, in my opinion, of the real estate agent's time, because the real estate agent is out there showing property, and then all of a sudden you find out that the client is not approved, but also you're risking your client's deposit on the line too.
Right.
So and today, with the appraisal period being inside the loan approval period, there's a lot of critical dates that if you're outside of that, the deposit might go into mediation, but it's a dicey situation.
So when a deposit, and real quick, because we are running out of time, let's talk real quick about mediation of a deposit. So tell me the process and what that looks like.
Yeah, so even if, let's say...
'Cause I've never had it happen, so I'm just kind of curious, and I hope I never do. So
Yeah. So even in, like the contract says seller buyer default, so let's say the buyer was outside of the loan approval period, and they were outside, of course, of the due diligence period, they didn't have an out, and the deposit really, per the contract, belongs to the seller, doesn't go to them right away.
it doesn't say it in there. We have to go to
the
mediation.
escrow agent can't just, we as a title company, escrow agent, we just can't send it to the seller. So a lot of the deals too, a contract that's $300,000, maybe the deposit was only $10,000. A lot of times the seller and buyer decide they don't even really want to go to mediation and hire attorneys, because by the time they hire attorneys and pay for the fees, it's going to all be eaten up. So sometimes they'll agree to split it. Sometimes the seller will play hardball and just decide to have the contract expire, relist the house, and then the buyers just kind of
have to try to get their money.
back. But that's why it's so important
Okay.
to kind of be confident in the mortgage company that you're hiring, because it's not fun to have that money hung up.
And your realtor is important too. But
I
speaking
brought
of which,
that up. It's not cool to, you as a realtor, you're the one that's taking the client out, spending time, could be weeks, especially in tough markets, trying to find properties, months.
Yeah.
And need to make sure that the pre-approvals are really legit and actually what they say they are.
So if you are looking for an excellent realtor, you can call me at 954-650-0827, or you can go to my website at laurasell.com. And what's the best way to get a hold of you, Josh?
You can go to our website, which is title-brothers.com, or you can call me at 561-901-0770.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you have any questions about title, definitely give Josh a call. If you can't get a hold of Josh, give me a call, and I will connect you. And like I said, if you're looking for a top agent to get the job done, give me a call. Laura Sanders.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827. Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We look forward to seeing you next week.